Top of the morning to you. Hey guys, welcome back to Just Piddlin Barbecue. Today, I've got my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with me. She's going to be helping me cook and operate the camera some. And we're just going to enjoy the day today on St. Patrick's Day. Today, we've got a Guinness beef stew that we're going to do. It's going to be outstanding, so stay tuned. Alright guys, first things first, we're using the Watchman Stove again today. Now, if some of you have tuned in and you're wondering about why I'm not using my pellet smoker much, I'm going to get back to using it as well, so stay tuned for those videos. But this thing's so much fun to mess around with. I just kind of got into cooking with it, so we're going to utilize it again today in a way that I hadn't utilized it before, and that's indirect cooking with a pot. And we're going to make a Guinness beef stew. So the first thing that I'm going to go with is I've got a large 7-quart Dutch oven. So we're going to put that on and start letting it heat up. And today, right now, I'm using pecan, just chunks of it. You could use whatever wood that you've got on hand. It could be little scraps out of your yard. It doesn't really matter because you're not cooking over direct heat and your meat's not going to be absorbing the smoke. You're going to be cooking in a pot, so it really doesn't matter what kind of wood that you're using. So we're going to let this heat up for just a second, and then we're going to go from there. Alright, so what I've got here is I've got 3 strips of thick cut bacon, and I've just diced them up really small. Our Dutch oven's up to temperature, and remember, in this Watchman stove right here, you're the one that's controlling the heat. Now, we don't need a roaring fire today, so I just kind of got it going nice and easy, small little flames down there, and I'm kind of adjusting my airflow with the ash drawer down there at the bottom as well. So we're going to go ahead and get this bacon in. And all we're going to do is kind of stir this around, let this render down a little bit. And this is going to be the grease that we use to brown off our beef. Alright guys, this bacon's rendered out. And now I'm going to remove it from the pan and start browning off our beef. Right, so I'm just going to remove this, but I've got a slotted spoon. So I'm going to try to save as much grease in the Dutch oven as I can. And that's plenty of grease to brown off that beef. And then once we do all this, we're going to add the bacon back in. It's just going to add flavor to it. Now, this beef right here is a chuck roast. Probably 2.5 pound chuck roast. And all I did was chop it up into pieces, you know, 1-inch pieces probably, and removed any of the hard fat and anything like that in it. And so that's what this is. It's just chopped up chuck roast. So now it's going in. Get all that in and spread it out to make sure it's got contact with the bottom of the Dutch oven. And we're going to let all that get brown. And what we want on this is a nice crust on all sides, but we're not trying to cook it all the way through. Alright, we've been going in the Dutch oven maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and start our seasoning process, and we're just going to kind of season in layers. I'm going to start off with some fresh cracked black pepper. Go down in here with that, and again we'll be adjusting our seasonings as we go. That'll be good to start off with. And I'm gonna go in with some kosher salt, and then we're going to give that a stir in just a minute. I'm trying to get that crust on that bottom, and then when we stir it, everything will be seasoned and combined. All right, now that we've got our chuck roast browned off, we're going to take that out and start our vegetables. So I'm going to get this out, just scoop it out, put it over here with our bacon for a few minutes. All right, now what I've got in here is about 4 stalks of celery diced up, 2 onions, kind of small to medium diced up. I've got some mushrooms. I've got some carrots. They're cut up into bite-sized pieces, and some potatoes, maybe 5 or 6 kind of medium red potatoes, and I've just diced those up, and all that stuff is fixing to go in. Make sure everything gets in. Sounds good. And again, we're going to season as we go. So we're going to salt everything up. Add a little ground pepper. Now we're going to let this go for a few minutes and kind of get everything a little soft and incorporated, and then I'll bring you back and show you what we got next. All right, now I got about a tablespoon and a half maybe of flour, and I'm gonna go in with it, just kind of dust over the top of these vegetables, and then I'm gonna kind of stir that in, and all we're gonna do is kind of cook that rawness off of the flour. And this is going to give everything a nice little crust and kind of thicken things up a little bit once we add our beer and our broth. So we're just going to cook this until the rawness of that flour gets cooked out. All right, now to this I've got a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. I'm probably going to use half of that, so probably about 3 ounces. And I'm just going to go in with that and incorporate this. Now this is going to give it a little bit of richness, and you just kind of want to incorporate it in, let it kind of dissolve and melt in with all these vegetables. And we're just about ready for the most important part, which is the Guinness. All right, now we got a nice rich color on all the vegetables with the addition of that tomato paste. And now for the best part, we're going in with 15 ounces of Guinness Stout in my Ton Tavern Marine Corps glass. Now I've let this set out a little bit. It's not fresh out of the ice box or the cooler because I don't want it to bring the temperature down on my pot, so I've been letting it sit out in its ambient temperature. And now we're going in with the beer. Beautiful. Now we're going to give that a stir and kind of scrape everything off the bottom. Get that fond off of the bottom and just let all those flavors come together. All right, now we're going to add back in our meat, and this is our chopped up chuck roast and our bacon that we browned off. We're going to add both of that in there. Give all that a stir and give everything a mix so everything's incorporated. And now we're going to add about a tablespoon of sugar just to offset the bitterness from the stout. We're also going to add in some dried oregano, probably about a teaspoon and a half. And I'm just going to kind of rub that in my hands. We've also got a sprig of rosemary that we're going to go in with, and a bay leaf and a half or so. All right, now I'm just going to add in our beef stock, and I'm going to add in enough beef stock to where it just covers everything. Looks like it's going to take one of these. Probably about that much ought to be good, I think. You can always add more, but I don't think we're going to need it. And now we're going to let this come up to a simmer, and once it starts to simmer, we're going to put a lid on it and let it go. All right, at this point everything's in the pot. Now we're going to bring it up to a simmer. Once it starts simmering and bubbling, then we're going to put the lid on it and let it calm down a little bit, and we just want a slow simmer for about 2 2.5 hours. All right guys, we've been simmering about 1.5 hours. I'm gonna check it. We'll do a little update and see how things are going. And we're still at a nice low simmer. It smells amazing. Nice color to it. Everything's getting nice and tender. Everything looks good. Cover it back up and let it keep going. Alright guys, we've been simmering for about 2 hours now. And now for the last thing that goes in, for a little bit of color, a little bit of texture, and I just like them. We're going to go in with some frozen green peas. It's going to add a little bit of color to it. And we just want those to go in there until they get heated through. Get the lid back on. Probably about 15 minutes and we'll be ready to eat. Alright guys, we've been simmering about 2.5 hours now, and this stew is ready to go. Now just as a recap, we used a chuck roast, about 2.5 pound chuck roast. I cut into cubes and browned that off right after we browned off some bacon, and we used that fat to render down, and then put that chuck roast in there, browned it up, put our vegetables in there, and put a Guinness and some beef stock in there, some seasonings, and we made ourselves a Guinness beef stew. Now we're fixing to give it a try. Now right after I put the peas in there, I gave it a taste test and added some more salt, pepper, and a couple of shakes of Louisiana hot sauce. Now again, this is my stew. If you're making your stew, make it however you want. You can eliminate some things, you can add some things. It's your stew. But this is how we did our beef stew today. Now let's give it a try and see how it tastes. We got a ladle here. We're going to ladle this up some. Get us some of that juice. Some of the beef. It smells amazing. Potatoes, mushrooms, carrots, celery. Let's get the lid put back on. By the way, the Watchman Stove did some work today. Performed like a champ, but when that large Dutch oven got heated up, it held the heat really well. So it compensated for any heat differences between the bottom of the Watchman Stove and the pot. Alright guys, let's give it a taste. Some of the beef, some of the vegetables, get a little bit of everything in here. It's a hearty stew. The meat is super tender. The vegetables are done perfectly. It's rich. You get the richness from the Guinness, that beef stock. A great stew, especially on St. Patrick's Day, but really anytime. Give Watchman Stove a look. www.thewatchmanstove.com. Send Ben a message. Ask him anything you want to ask him. Leave your comments below, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and until next time, shenanigans, I'll be piddling. Alright, now that we've got the beef stew, the chuck roast ground up, I hate that one. Alright, now that we've got our chuck roast ground
Smoke was killing me.
my pot of gold's feeling lucky.